Come on, baby, make it hurt so good. That's how your body feels as soon as you walk out the door this morning. 25 degrees here, 10 after 7 o'clock. 710 America's Great North Coast, the best mix. We are Star 97.1 FM. Good morning. It's Mark and Jer. Say hello, Jeremy. Jeremy's over here checking out the camera.
Hi. I'm going back to my college days behind the camera. So
I was going to say you should feel very much at home with all the cameras around
and we got to retake
that. Please take 25. Of course, I'm used to that, all the recuts I do in production all the time. But we're going to make friends. We have Len and Patti Brown. Now, you guys hail from Canton, Ohio, right?
Canton, Ohio. That's right.
Tell people what you're doing here in Ashtabula County. This is going to be fun. Very exciting production happening here with a lot of history involved in that train disaster, unfortunately, which happened, which would have put Ashtabula County on the map when it comes to, horrific news stories of the day. The year we're talking about is 1876, I believe.
That's correct. Yeah, this disaster happened December 29th, 1876, between Christmas and New Year's. So the train actually had kind of a festive feel to it, but yet there was a raging blizzard outside, and people were really wanting to get to their destinations, but the train was going really slow. It was actually a double header, which means that it was being pulled by two engines.
Right.
And this wasn't just a normal train. This was a beautiful luxury train. In fact, think of the Titanic. If you've ever seen the images of the inside of the Titanic, you can actually recall the the dripping tapestries and the fine woodwork and the beautiful chairs and the elegance of it. And this is exactly what this train was like. It was called the Crack. It was the most luxury train of the day, and it was the flagship train for the Lakeshore Michigan Southern Railroad.
Now, so you're talking like a PBS guy.
Okay. Yeah.
I like that, though. See, there's no bigger fan of history than this guy talking to you right now. Like anybody else on the weekends, if I find those channels, whether it's PBS or the History Channel, whatever, I can watch those movies over and over and over again. The documentaries, I love that. And we're talking about a piece of history here. Matter of fact, if you drive down Station Avenue or, Station Avenue or parts of Lake Avenue and you make the right turn there, that historic, iconic train depot has been there, literally for years around here. And that's that train line, that major train line we're talking about. Back in the day, of course, we're talking the days of steam and also the days, it was a major thing to take a trip on a train. The elegance, the wardrobe, everybody was always incredibly dressed up, dressed to the nines. And then, as you mentioned too, they were making the run, and all of a sudden things went horribly wrong, and the rest is history. This has been talked about. People have written songs about that. There's a YouTube video, as a matter of fact, of a gentleman with his guitar under that trestle. And when you actually, I suppose if you have when I was a kid, for example, you could go down to a place called Cedar Crest Park here in town, and they play baseball they play baseball there to this day. But there's a way, if you know how to get back to the river bed and make your way back there, which we did as kids. As a child, it was just a train trestle. You didn't really have the idea what happened there. Now, with all the talk about it, all the history, and the presentation you're working on, it just takes a whole different feel now when you get back to that part of the Ashtabula River.
Yeah, the bridge is actually just down the river, actually, from the hospital. In fact, if you stand on the hospital landing pad where the helicopters come in, you can actually see the bridge from there. And it's very interesting because the Ashtabula County Medical Center has its roots with this disaster. The hospital was actually built as a result of the disaster. There was no medical facilities in the town at the time. But for a town the size of Ashtabula, it really wasn't, Ashtabula was not a, quote, hick town. I mean, there were doctors and lawyers and business people here. It was a really, really cool town.
Tell me about bigger production. I'm kind of curious. How did you get involved with the production for this upcoming PBS documentary?
Well, I guess that's my story. At work, I work at Stark State College, and one of my coworkers sent me a link to this story about the Ashtabula Train Disaster, and he knew that Len and I did documentaries. He thought we might be interested. And I took a look at this, and I love history too, and I've lived in Northeast Ohio all my life, and neither of us had heard of it. And I was kind of saying last night at our dinner, this is the best kept secret. Nobody knows about it outside of this general area. So I took it to Len, we studied and researched it, and then we ended up meeting with some people here in Ashtabula.
I didn't even really know about it until maybe a few years ago, and the more I hear about the stories you're going to be able to tell and the different pieces of the project. And actually last night we had a little get-together in Jefferson and got to touch some of the recovered pieces. That's pretty amazing stuff. It's almost like you know, being able to go and see a Titanic exhibit. I mean, because the scope and scale of this thing is probably the biggest in the country, right?
It is. This was actually the worst bridge disaster in American history, and 97 people lost their lives in it. Many people survived the initial crash, but they were trapped and literally burned to death in the wreck, and 50 were totally unrecognizable. And they were buried in 19 coffins in a mass grave at the Chestnut Grove Cemetery, where there's an obelisk marking that. And they're not far from Charles Collins, who was the engineer of the railroad, but he was not the engineer of the bridge. There's a big myth out there that Charles Collins actually had a lot to do with the bridge and engineered it, but he didn't. He was actually taken off the project because Stone wanted him to work on the Franklinton line. And so he really didn't have anything to do with it, but after it was finished and completed, he was responsible for maintaining the bridge, and he really didn't know anything about iron bridge construction. So it was a challenge for him to try to, you know, maintain inspections on something he knew nothing about.
What was the major problem with that construction of the bridge? I mean, the technology of the day, because I mean, you're talking about a time where that was supposed to be the state-of-the-art process of bridge building for railroads back in the day, but obviously something went horrifically wrong. What was the actual deal with that?
Well, they actually had a bad casting. They weren't really good back then in casting large iron pieces, and when it was cast, there were actually air bubbles that got into the casting in the second panel of the bridge, and then you combine that with this extreme cold weather, and in years and years of use, they developed micro fractures in that piece. And of course, they don't have the equipment that we have today that can X-ray and find micro cracks, you know, in bridges.
Right.
So they were fairly ignorant. And then, of course, you have the element of the cold weather. There was a blizzard that night with a 50-mile-an-hour wind, and iron doesn't really do good in cold weather. It makes it more brittle. In fact, when the Titanic sank, that was one of the problems that caused the iron and the rivets and things to kind of snap on the side. It was because of the quality of the iron and what iron does to cold.
This was such a story too. I mean,
cold does to iron.
Exactly. The train disaster. I mean, the actual event. That's one part of the story. But to actually read more about this goes so far and beyond the actual event. There's murder involved here.
Yes.
There was a suicide involved. There's such a back side of the story, which I'm sure is probably more fodder for the documentary, well beyond the actual event we're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was even more things with the bridge. As I wrote the script, and when I was looking at it, the bridge actually became a character in a lot of ways because of the engineering. This was the first time that Stone had created an all-iron bridge from his wooden Howe truss pattern. And besides the casting of the iron, there were also some engineering flaws and some construction flaws. When they corrected them, they actually in some ways corrected it for a time, but it was a ticking time bomb. Right. It was slowly, the compression was the only thing holding it together, and when things started to slip, it was just waiting to fall.
So the project itself, hoping sometime next fall to be completed. Right now you're in the pre-production phases and, also getting some additional funds together for the film. And in correlation with PBS, it works a little bit differently than something that would be on networks. So kind of explain quickly how that works and maybe your website and how to get a hold and get involved in the project.
Sure. Yes, since this is a PBS project, the producers are required to go and raise their own funds because PBS is a non-commercial. They don't sell commercials like History Channel or Discovery Channel does. And we've had projects on both of those channels, but they sell commercials and they use those funds to then go in partnership with production houses to produce their shows for them. But PBS is different. PBS is non-commercial, and that's why at the very beginning of the program you'll see this program is brought to you by such and such foundation, or such and such foundation and viewers like you.
Right.
So what we're out doing basically is we're on the road, raising funds, to finish this project. We've actually done a lot. We have a lot of sponsors. Bachman Trains in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, actually donated a replica of the Pacific Express, both engines and all 11 cars. The train is about 20 feet long. It's over at the Jefferson Historical Society.
I've got to see that.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. We have to get a bigger transformer so we can run all the lights and things in it. Bachman didn't realize we had so many lighted cars, but we had to have a train that we can film in the movie, along with some of our location train, which is in Strasburg, Pennsylvania. So we want to do some really neat special effects shots, so we have to have the model train with a model bridge. And speaking of the model bridge, we have Mainline Bridges in Phoenix, Arizona is building a 15.5-foot replica
Is that right?
of this bridge that we're actually going to insert into a miniature Ashtabula Gorge that is being built in North Bloomfield, Ohio, to insert the bridge into, so we can film the train and the bridge together.
Okay.
And then with the 3D animation, our director of animation, Matt McComb, is going to work his magic and bring this to life, and really bring the hugeness of this crash to life.
When it comes to actual filming production here in the county, are you looking for extras or actors, or how's that going to work out for anybody who might be
Yes,
interested?
we are. I'm glad that you said that, because we really want to pull this is Ashtabula's story, and there are many people all throughout Ashtabula County that are involved in this project, and we want to use as many actors and extras as we can. There are some great theaters here in town, community theaters in town, and I'm sure that we'll be contacting them and getting them involved in the project.
And it's interesting, there's generations that are still here that were actually involved in that, including one of the sponsors, which is Ducro, and one of the original members of the family was involved in actually helping to recover some of the
Yes,
dead.
that's right.
So JP's one of the good friends of the program too. He's on all the time, and they were with us last night. So it's just amazing. So at any point you want to get a hold of Len, I put a link up on the blog at the Jeremy James blog up there on star97.com. You can always email me as well, and I can get the information to Len too. So if you're interested in the process, being one of the people that helps fund the thing, or wants to be in it or involved or can help out some way, it's a very real project. It's going to be between $300,000 and $500,000 by the time it's all done. Yeah,
That's amazing.
I think so. Yeah.
It's funny too, when you say trains here in this region, obviously the backbone of the American economy. I mean, there's so many people, even on weekends, you'll see fathers and sons at some of the iconic crossings here in Ohio and Pennsylvania taking photos, waiting for that coal car to come by. Of course, I think we also miss the caboose, don't we? But anyway, when you say train, whether it's a train show, for example, Lakeland Community College, huge train show every year, and there's, volumes and just, books and videos on, for example, this particular train disaster that we're talking about, but you as well, you have a pretty sweet website which deals with engineering disasters. I want you to make sure you give the address for that too.
Oh yeah. If you want to learn more about this project and see all the behind the scenes, we built the website basically so that people can follow the making of the film and go behind the scenes.
Cool.
You can go to engineeringtragedy.com. That's engineeringtragedy.com, and you can see all the different characters. You can watch videos, and just check out everything. The entire story is posted on there, and it's a lot of fun. And remember, to see the train, you can go to Jefferson Historical Society on the weekends, on Fridays and Saturdays, and view the train.
Well, thank you. Welcome to Ashtabula County. Quite educational, and again, unfortunately, the subject that we're making this film for is a situation where people died, and it was a major disaster of the time. But again, the PBS, the whole production, and just the way it looks. I mean, we heard the trailer yesterday. This is going to be a major production, and it's been a joy to meet you. So officially, welcome to our neighborhood, and happy holidays to you.
Thanks. Yeah, you guys should play the trailer sometime.
We'll do that somewhere down the road. I think we have. Did we do that yesterday? We can do
Yep.
that again. We got that covered. Len and Patti Brown from Canton, Ohio, with Beacon Productions and a PBS documentary for the train disaster going back to 1876. 724 Star, 97.1 with Mark and JR. Good morning.